welcome everybody to this conversation with Abhishek Kothari. He is one of the founder members of Flexiloans. So welcome Abhishek for a conversation.
Thank you so much. I mean, means a lot, Smita, coming from you, and especially external validations are the true form of reward. When you say this, it means a lot, and looks like some of that hard work has paid off.
Wanted to introduce you to the team. He is an IIT and ISB pass out. Okay, he has worked in UK, US, and now he started this company with a bunch of his friends. And there are 4 founder members, 4 men. Okay, so Abhishek, a first question: why didn't you have any founder woman in the team?
वो पुरानी कहावत है ना that for every man there's a woman who's really working in the background to make him successful. While you don't see women in our founding team, our wives have really played that role.
Can we share a short journey of yours through?
My personal life has been kind of 3 phases. Like phase 1 was mera beta engineer banega. First 20 years was chasing that dream. Second phase of life was really about discovering and chalo apne liye kuch karte hain. And so started kind of working, MBA, went to US, went to UK. That was the second phase, which was mostly about kind of finding out what is my character, what is my soul, what is it that I'm good at, bad at. And the third phase started really with Flexiloans because it's an entirely new chapter. Deepak, Ritesh, Manish and I, friends from ISB, started this company, and our aim is to essentially help small business owners in India get access to credit in a matter of clicks. Today, 90% of these small business owners, and I'm talking about the kirana wala where you buy your groceries from, he doesn't get credit. 90% of them don't get credit from banks. And the ones who get have to wait for 21 days to get credit. That's the typical TAT and the typical coverage. Our objective is to essentially help these 90% of underserved SMEs get money through a technical platform. And we've been at it for 5 years, 200 people now, 1 office in Bombay, we service pan-India. Out of that 240 people, 40% are women. So very diversified workforce, average age is 25 years. So it's that company that you would come in and you'd feel that everybody is younger than me. And that's what you're building.
What is Abhishek Kothari's thought process about equality? What do you mean by equality?
In a workplace, and equality can have many definitions, but in a workplace, I believe it is purely about meritocracy and merit-based assessment. I mean, whether it is gender, and we can kind of extend that definition to many kinds of biases, IIT versus non-IIT, competitor versus non-competitor, reference se aaya ya reference se nahi aaya hai, IIM se hai ya nahi hai. All of these are biases. I believe that a workplace can kind of really demonstrate equality if they have principles that are based on merit-based actions. And that action could be about paying the right salary, giving the right career path, giving the right treatment, right positioning in the leadership team, whatever it is. Then kind of the conversation becomes far more meaningful. It is no longer about where has Abhishek come from or where has Smita come from, but it is about what can we add value, how much value can we add to the organization, and that determines the value that the organization provides to.
Awesome, Abhishek. You know, a lot of organizations or a lot of people hiring people, they have biases you spoke about, right? Only by a picture, a person can get rejected or accepted.
Yeah.
That is how the biases work. So yes, meritocracy is something that we should be looking at, and good to hear from you that that is the soul.
I'll give you an example, Smita. I mean, just when you were saying about biases, our first data scientist in the company was a guy who I was interviewing. And the guy came to the office and he couldn't really, very nervous. And so he wasn't able to carry through the conversation for more than 2-3 minutes. And the first thought that my mind said, not good, let's not waste my time. 30 minutes is too long to waste. 5 minutes mein khatam karte hain. And then he started drawing something on the paper for an algorithm that he was trying to explain to me. And I realized that there's something in it. And so I said, why don't you speak in Hindi? And he's been our best data scientist hire since then. And that's the kind of bias you and I are talking about. That just because the person couldn't speak or fluently in English, I was willing to reject that person. And whereas in my life, I would have probably interviewed 500 data scientists. So biases exist, and they exist with people like you and me.
So do you think, Abhishek, that you've worked in US, UK, do you think Indian workplaces are any different from equality perspective?
When I went to the US or the UK, and I spent more time in the UK, I was shocked. And I was shocked not because of what women were doing. I was shocked because of what men were doing. Okay, men were taking paternity leaves to take care of kids. They were cooking, they were gardening, they were picking kids from school. It all looked very weird to me. कि ये कैसी दुनिया है. I mean, men carrying babies in a sling. I said, ये तो देखा ही नहीं है मैंने कभी. That is so rare. And I think that's where, I mean, it's not about what I learned about equality for women. It's about what I learned of what men could do to be able to bring more equality to the workplace. And I have this strong belief that it's not workplaces which have biases, it's the households which have biases. It all starts with a bias at home, which leads to a bias of what I bring at home as at workplace as a man, or what the woman carries with her as a resultant of that bias to the workplace. And so, while your question is about, I mean, naturally the workplaces there were far more inclusive, far more tolerant. Natural bias doesn't exist. There are biases. There are biases in many ways. That wouldn't be the first thought that comes to your mind. It is very deep down under somewhere, so it's not non-existent. But I think the context with which, and I've seen people who are highly biased in India, when they move to the UK, within 3 months, 6 months, they're transformed. They are now very inclusive. They want their wives to work. They want their kids to go to the best schools. But when they're in India, all boys school में जाना है और girls school में जाना है, काम करना है, नहीं करना है. And it made me feel that I think the context matters a lot. The same person behaves very differently because of the context. And so when that environment, when that law, when that governance structure, when everything comes together and where there's an equal opportunity environment and your other partner is willing to kind of do the work, then I think it is no longer about equality, because we have to remove inequality. We are talking about equality, but we have to remove inequality. At least that's what I would feel the most. It's not about what was at the workplace, what was I observing on the streets.
So in India, we have two kinds of India, two extreme Indians, right? You and I are in Mumbai and we see one kind of India. Okay. But if you go to, our respective natives, okay, then we'll be different India, right? See that maybe equality exists a little bit in Mumbai, but may not be there if we go to Rajasthan or we go to Mangalore for that matter, from where I come, right? Do you think it will be different?
Even have my parents think the same way that I do. And I have been brought up in a home where I have 3 elder sisters. So I've been beaten up, I've been raised, and I have been trained by 3 elder sisters. Even then that household has biases. Kiske education pe kitna kharcha hoga, who's given what kind of opportunities. Subliminally, that happens. And I remember this incident where, I mean, just about when I was home for Diwali, my cousin brother's eldest son, he's about 16 years old now. Me and my father were in a car, and my father made some kind of a comment which was about some kind of a bias for a daughter. And he said, Dadu, agar aap bhi aisa sochoge, to duniya ka kya hoga? And what he's referring to is the fact that my father is a very well-educated man. He is given equal opportunities to my sisters and me. And then my father was looking at me and said, "Maine kuch galat bola kya?" You're right. These exist. But I also believe that we adapt really fast. Aap dekhoge, technology. I mean, my father couldn't learn technology, but I taught him technology. He could now do WhatsApp. He could now do Facebook. He could do other things. So people adapt really fast to if that principle leads to a value for them. And there are people in our company where who come from really underprivileged families. We got them as interns. Today they are engineers, and the daughter earns as a software engineer, and the brother is still an auto rickshaw driver. Okay, and she earns more. Now the parents don't want the girl to sit at home. And so when you see the value coming out of it, and the value could be different for different people. For somebody, it could be about standard of life or quality of life. For somebody else, it could be about getting from one place to another is a big thing. For somebody else, to move out of slum to a better home is an important factor. And so as this society progresses towards a more open mind and women are given opportunities, you will see tier 2 and tier 3 will have the same rate of change. It's just that tier 1 are more exposed to those opportunities than tier 2. We are a poor country. We need reasons to change. We don't need, when you're talking about tier 2 and 3, the change doesn't happen because a leader is saying it. The change will happen when the leader is actually quantifying it for me in some sort and making it work for me.
if you see somebody insensitive, your colleague who is insensitive and has displayed that kind of a behavior, what will be your reaction?
At least at Flexiloans, we have zero tolerance for it. We've never let go. We have rarely let go people for mistakes. We've very frequently let go people for these kind of behaviors. So a part of it is, now I'm also a practical guy, right? So you can't change the world in one go. You can't educate everyone at any instance of time when you can't be the moral police in the organization, because that also, people are what they are, and there's a degree of insensitivity that they show. First is, as an organization, I have to draw a line on what is insensitive, what is not, because people have to fight their own battles. They also have to resolve differences between themselves. Otherwise, in today's conversation, I would have said 5 things that are insensitive to somebody. And hence, typically what I do is, things like rumors, wrong behaviors, biases, they spread very fast. They're faster than any contagious virus that we've seen. And so as an organization, when I'm talking about insensitive behavior, we have rules, guidelines, code of conduct, ethics committee, etc. And we take it very, very seriously. Everything gets escalated to that. I've also been in situations where it's not really insensitive, but it is just not the right thing to say. It's somewhere in that area where it's acceptable, but insensitive. As a leader, my role is to not call out that person in that group setting, but to educate that person later. Many a times, leaders try to become moral police or don't care at all. But if we have a process where we can educate people in a one-to-one setting for minor offenders, and for major offenders, you take serious calls. And that's what I would do. I mean, that's a regular part of running a company.
And have you ever done something with your direct reportees? Now, you have a huge team, right? But there must be one level down whom you must be speaking to, any conversations with regard to equality, any conversations with regard to, respectful workplaces. So is there anything that you have done with your direct reportees?
We do a few things very regularly, and that I can't quantify the impact, but I'll tell you, we conduct very regular trainings, and you've been a part of a few trainings at Flexiloans for that. Every new joinee who comes to Flexiloans, in the next town hall, which happens every month, they have to stand up in front of 200 people and reiterate the values of Flexiloans, and respect is the first value of Flexiloans. It is almost like an oath that they take, and typically your conviction towards something increases dramatically if you say it out loud. If I have to quit smoking, one is in my head, second is I tell my wife, and third is I tell everyone. I put it on Facebook, I want to quit smoking. Then I can't even go out and chupke se have a smoke. Similarly, if somebody stands up in front of 200 people and says, I want to lose weight, I will demonstrate this value, then naturally the chances of that happening are higher. So we're doing a little bit of a activity on that. There's also a lot of governance, but I'll tell you again, one thing that I tell everyone in my team. Imagine that this is a workplace that you control, and imagine that your sister, your wife, or your family member works here. Every action that you do is visible to them. Would you do that? And that's how we build the company. We believe that tomorrow, and there are family members of ours who work in the organization. And if I can just picture that everything that I'm doing is visible to my family, every action that my employee does will affect a family member in a certain way, then my behaviors change very, very dramatically. And so it's a standard thing that we say, that act as if your family is watching. If you still think that's a right thing to say, then there's fundamentally something wrong, but otherwise that works all the time.
So as a CEO, as a co-founder, you run a large organization, right? So if you have to give a piece of advice to these people about creating a safe and a thriving organization for women employees, okay, what would be that piece of advice for them?
It'd be same as what I would do if I have to tell people to wear a helmet, to wear a mask, to not bribe people, to not hit people. There are 3 or 4 things which everyone should do. The first is you have to believe that you matter and your voice matters. It's not something that happens next door. It is not something that happens in other companies and not mine. These issues exist on a day-to-day level. And so you have to believe that your actions matter tremendously as a CEO or a leader in a company. There is no law without governance. So put governance and penalties around bad behavior. create an ethics committee, create a posh committee, write down a code of conduct, write down values, and create governance around it where there's a penalty if you don't display. You can't have a piece of paper floating around as an ethics or a values or a document and nobody cares. We at Flexiloans have our appraisals dependent on the values that you demonstrate. So that's to the extent that we go. Third is become a parrot. Talk about it every time. In every context, in every conversation, bring in the fact that this matters, the values matter, the biases don't need to exist, and we are a meritocratic organization. I mean, I've worked at some wonderful companies like Fractal or Visa, and I've realized that leaders do that. And every leader who's passionate about something, they keep talking about it because they believe in it so much that sometimes talking about it pushes that belief to other people as well. So that's the third thing, talk about it. And the fourth is, I think you can't win this all by yourself. So you have to create champions in the team. In certain organizations, the champions could be HR teams. In somewhere else, it could be your entire leadership team. In somewhere else, it could be certain people who feel that passion as much as you do. It doesn't matter. Find, if you have like a 5 to 100 ratio, so if you have 5 champions for 100 people, then there's enough coverage for people to look up to someone, and most likely these 5 people will be role models, and someone will look up to them, and they will get those behaviors inculcated.
So, any initiatives that your organization is taking to help reach women at the top?
There was a time we've always had, of course, we have 4 founders who are men, but we've always had women representation in the leadership team. There was a point in 2017 end or 18 start when we had an all-male leadership team because somebody left. And this discussion happened at the founding team level as well as the board level that we need to build a diversified leadership team. Today, we have Devi and Gitanjali who are a part of our leadership team. So we do take this seriously, but I think we need to do more. I don't think it is ever enough. Sometimes the starting point is so low that even 2 feels like 2 out of a 10 good number, but it's not really. I mean, why is it 2 out of 10? Why can't it be 5 out of 10? While we don't discriminate, but I think sometimes you have to go out of the way to kind of build build that right diversity in the team. And I think the feeling is that we could do more. We are not way behind, but we're not like the leader in the pack.
Is there any female founders ecosystem, Abhishek, which exists? Are you aware of it? What are your unique learnings regarding diversity in the startups? Basically, come from that space, right? You all were a startup few years back. Okay, you can't call yourself startup anymore.
Oh, we are still a startup. I think it's a mindset rather than the stage of the company. But to your question about women founders, I think there are plenty. I mean, everything is the ratio is always lower. But if you look around, you'll find, for example, Shraddha, who runs Your Story. I mean, every startup founder kind of wants to be covered by Your Story. So, she's definitely a very visible one. Upasna from MobiQuick, she's a part of our fintech leadership community. She's a co-founder at MobiQuick. Recently, I was in the list of Business World 40 under 40, and I was scanning through that list. And there's Aditi, who runs Baker's Dozen. There is Dipali, who runs Super Smelly. And then, of course, our investor, Falguni Nair, she's the founder of Nykaa. There are amazing women out there who are doing some really good work. And I could go on and on. I mean, in my past life, I've, for example, Richa from Zivame, Sairi from Shiro's. There are plenty of women founders in the community. In one of the forums, we decided that we will not participate in a panel with only men on it. So the hashtag was no more manels. And that's if you notice, a lot of fintech panels now are not all men panels, because that's a pledge that fintech community has taken.
Are there any learnings from US, UK that you have picked up, and come back and incorporated in Flexiloan, which you thought was very different, doesn't happen in India, and we should take this as best practices or learnings?
So it's not about, as I said, because there's nothing about a law or a practice or an HR rule that really can make a difference. It's about the little things. As I was saying, don't stereotype. Respect is one of our core values. Now, typically, you'd find collaboration, you'd find innovation as a regular company's core values. But we deliberately put respect in there because we want to build a culture. And it's not just about genders respecting each other. It's also about seniors respecting juniors. It's about you respecting people with different or varying or divergent thought processes. So respect we take very seriously. We were one of the early companies to start very consciously focusing on ethics and values and instituting posh committees, zero tolerance. That's where we're very clear. And it's very easy to say zero tolerance. It's a very abused word. But if you walk onto our floor and if you ask anyone that do they ever feel that we have tolerance towards biased behavior towards women, men would say that definitely not. And women will agree. We are also cognizant of the fact that while laws exist, they are not enough. We have to do our role.
So, as an entrepreneur, has your experience in UK and US impacted you in any way through your journey in India now? Do you see any difference, or do you think it is the same thing? Or what is your experience like? And
I mean,
adding on one question, Abhishek, is about do you think a woman in India will feel anything different if she works in US or UK? Just adding on.
I'll answer the second question because that pretty much answers the first one as well. And this is my wife's words that when she started working in the UK, she said that I feel liberated. And look, that's the feeling, right? And it kind of starts from the moment you step out of your home and you carry it all the way until you come back home. Is that that sense of career, the sense of safety, the sense of belonging. You don't have to worry about the unnecessary things when you enter into your office. You don't have to worry about how people perceive you. Will you get your next promotion? It is metric oriented. It is KPI oriented. So clearly, I mean, there is a difference. But if you look at it, I mean, I came back 4 years ago, and India's also transformed a lot in the last 4 years. When I left in 2011, and today, it is a very different workforce. Millennials are driving a lot of change. More and more people are becoming aware of concepts like posh committees, concepts like ethics, and either leaders are investing into it, or because they are passionate about it, or because they employ a kind of workforce that demands it. And that's the driving change, really, Smita. If you see, people shouldn't wait for leaders to take actions. If an organization wants to hire smart people, then they need to bring in practices, and smart people should ask for it. And sometimes just saying it out loud makes the difference. So, and that's what happens really. People don't assume कि ये तो चलता है. In UK, if an employer would do something which is detrimental to you, and it's not just about sexual harassment, you're talking about pay discrimination, you're talking about keeping you out of the meetings, out of bigger sales deals, it could be the real things that matter to you, they voice it out. And they voice it out to the extent that organizations can't hide things now. There's social media. So you can't take things for granted anymore. And that's what's driving the change today. And you will see a very different workforce in the next 5 years.
So it's amazing. Yeah, just voice it out. Just say that, why did you keep me out of that project?
And logic would prevail. See, there was for every 10 good things, there'll be 2 bad things, 2 bad actors. But you can't suppress the 10 good actors for the 2 bad actors.
There was one of our conversation where a lady comes back from her maternity leave. She's been a high performer, and this particular leader of hers, she's a salesperson, leader of hers does not give her traveling job, imagining that she just had a baby and she wouldn't be able to travel actually.
Right.
He was thinking that he's doing to benefit her, but he didn't have an open conversation with her to let her know that I'm doing this for this reason. And the lady was so upset, saying that, at least talk to me, I am ready to travel, right?
Yeah.
So these are the kind of open conversations we
वो कहते हैं ना, वो बात करने से बात बनती है. I think that is how everybody should approach it.
When you were in UK, US, were you conversant with laws which was conducive to women employees? Do you think they were, or do you think India has better laws? It's okay if you're not very, while you do not have law background, but do you think you have any idea on those lines?
People remember laws only when there is a penalty. Okay, and typically penalties are for employers in these cases, and employers have created governance structures around it such that they don't get into law. So as an employee of an organization, when I was in the UK, I wouldn't care about it. All I have to follow is my company's guidelines. It is their headache to make sure that everything is written down there. In India, I mean, naturally, I think law is nothing without governance. And we've got, I mean, POSH is something that didn't exist a few years ago or wasn't really well governed. Now it is, and you can see a tremendous difference because of that. But there's so much more that can be done on POSH, more awareness. Law says quarterly एक बार exercise करना है, तो हम quarterly एक बार करते हैं. Why can't we do it more often? It still is, but the moment you put laws and boundaries and governance around it, at least उतना तो होने लगता है. Then there is concepts around salary arbitrage, protection. But we are still talking about, see, there are 2 or 3 lanes in which these laws run, right? One is sexual harassment. I think that is where India is kind of caught up a lot. Then there is discrimination in terms of salaries, wages, etc. That bias exists. There is no denying the fact, and it's not just men versus women. It would be in multiple other dimensions that wage arbitrage would exist. Then there is, I mean, simple concepts like health and safety. How much does an organization invest in health and safety is a factor that's not really governed. I mean, and I'm not talking about putting a fire extinguisher at the reception to call it a health and safety checklist completed. It's about the broader part of work hour monitoring. When you go back home, do you have sufficient support from the employer? Is somebody managing your work hours effectively? Which is where I don't think there are laws about number of hours, but who's governing it? So it is vague, and the only kind of good thing I'm happy about from an employee protection perspective is POSH.
Yes, in fact, Abhishek, bang on. I was researching on US and UK laws on harassment. They don't have anything called out separately for sexual harassment, but I was researching and I feel India has the best law. Okay, there it is a little mixed up with other kind of harassment, and then it kind of is not as stringent as I feel our law is.
Yeah, and the empowerment that the law has given to the enforcement officer and to the local jurisdiction, that is powerful. Otherwise, it's paper. I mean, you could get stuck in red tape forever. But here it is, it is fast, and that makes all the difference.
One final question for you. Any story, any experience, or any instance that you would want to share with our audience?
I don't have anything, any example from, I mean, of course, apart from what we've discussed, but I'll tell you a very different example. And everybody should maybe take something from that real story that I'm telling you. So me and my younger cousin, were driving in Mumbai. And there was a lot of traffic, like every time in Mumbai. And there was an ambulance that was trying to pass by. And I was trying to find, and in UK, there is a law that if you don't give way to ambulance, then you will be fined. And the fine comes in your mailbox, so you don't have to go anywhere. You just have to pay the fine. In India, there's also that law, but not governed properly. But and so I was trying to kind of get to the side, and the cousin said, "Kyun kar rahe ho? Not everybody else is going to do that. So just stay where you are." And I told him that imagine that a family member was in that ambulance. What would you want me to do? You would want me to do my part, right? Get out of the way, and hopefully the other person will also think the same and get out of the way, and the ambulance finds its way through. And I think for every bias, for every stereotype, for everything that we feel, don't believe for a moment that you can't play your part, because that's when the herd mentality of not caring starts. If you care, my cousin will care. If he cares when he's driving, then he will tell one more friend, and hopefully we'll catch on a wave. But otherwise, to hum jahan hai wahin rahenge.
Thank you very, very much, Abhishek. I think we had a wonderful conversation. I have so many learnings from here today.